The year was 2051. The United States made the decision to invade Mexico. The rest is history. In this video, I'm going to be tackling one of, if not the greatest mysteries surrounding the Fallout universe. We're going to be talking about the Great War. Who caused it? What led up to it? How many people were actually involved in this crazy story going off the rails and causing the Fallout universe to end up where it is now? Well, hopefully we find that out today. I'm so grateful for you all to be here learning with me. Now, if you love me, hit that subscribe button, and without further ado, let's talk war. So, the United States decided it was time for some war. And with more war comes more oil. You got that right. The United States invaded Mexico in 2051 for their beautiful, delicious oil. This was the first main spark of global feuds that will later be known as the Resource Wars. I mean, tensions got hot. So hot that the European Commonwealth decided they wanted a piece of the pie as well. The European Commonwealth launched their own invasion on the Middle East. And in the glorious month of December in the year 2053, the city of Tel Aviv was absolutely destroyed in nuclear annihilation. Tel Aviv's destruction made history, with it being the first nuclear detonation to be used against another nation since Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And if you think it ends there, well, you, my friend, are wrong. In that same year, 2053, a plague broke out. This plague, also known as the New Plague, Limit 115, and the Blue Flu, started spreading rapidly. It got so bad that Vault-Tec was commissioned to develop a cure. Holy hell, I'm having a little bit of deja vu right now. Anyway, this is the start of Project Safe House, essentially. So this whole thing the world has experienced is what experts would call a chain reaction, or a snowball. Whatever you want to call it. Europe's beef with the Middle East literally caused the total collapse of the United Nations. The next size of snowball is the price of oil went through the roof. The next snowball size is all the oil fields drying up. Yep, you heard that right. All oil, basically gone by the end of the European Civil War, which took place in 2060. So, in case you're wondering how the Sino-American War started, this is essentially how it went down. Since Europe's oil fields were totally empty, the United States had thought, uh-oh, I hope they don't come for Alaska's oil. So the US decided it would probably be a good time to start building up defenses in Alaska to ensure they didn't get got by anybody trying to take their oil. So the year 2066, the United States decided to place an indefinite embargo on their oil. Honestly, I get it. It's a dog-eat-dog world. You gotta keep what's yours. However, China didn't exactly jive with that. So China's reaction to this is to launch a full-scale invasion of Alaska. Obviously, a pretty reasonable, level-headed reaction. Anywho, this attack was done through the People's Liberation Army. That's essentially what sparked the Sino-American War. Now, obviously, Canada's got their boys down south, and I guess up north-ish, waging war with their boys across the pond, so clearly they're going to get caught up in this. To start off, the United States actually had the support of Canada. How nice of them, eh? Well, that didn't last for long because the economic cost alone was having some real bummer effects, causing them to have a little resistance against the US. And then, a total revolt against the US. So, Canada's freedom fighters tried, and failed, to sabotage the Alaskan pipeline. So this, of course, pissed off the United States. America initiated military annexation against their syrupy brothers Canada. This, of course, ended Canada's dissolution as a sovereign nation. Okay, remember the New Plague? Well, that's still going on. The United States government partnered with Vault-Tec, and you're probably thinking, oh wow, they're really trying to amp up the process of finding a cure, right? Well, no, actually. Instead, the US government and Vault-Tec started turning this cure into more of what is known as the forced evolutionary virus. This scared the holy hell out of China. The US had the majority of their focus on defending Alaska at this point. However, the US launched a counterstrike on China. This took place in 2074. At this point, you can tell we're getting real close to that fateful year. So, the US is at some of their greatest potential at this point. I mean, the US tech at this stage was phenomenal. The T-51 power armor got issued and deployed in 2076. It was indeed America's overwhelming military might that won them the Battle of Anchorage in January 2077. The whole situation actually caused the battle to be in China, and peace was essentially off the table at this point. The threat of nuclear war was at its highest point. So let's go back a little bit. In the mid-2070s, our boys Vault-Tec hosted a nice secret little meeting with all the major companies. We're talking Robco, West-Tec, Repcon, Big MT, all the big guys. Barb and Bud revealed Project Safe House. And as we know, Project Safe House was really just meant to experiment on vault dwellers to help form the best post-war society that they could have full control over. And by them, I really mean the Enclave. Now, if you remember the Fallout series, these big corporate dudes' main question was how to guarantee an outcome. We then hear Barb state that they would drop the bombs themselves. We later find out, of course, it was Ben Linus, aka Wilzig. So Robert House explains that he isn't quite sure anyone in that meeting were going to be the ones to actually drop the bombs. We see him genuinely terrified that there's a third player at the table. Rightfully so. Robert House doesn't like being wrong. I mean, do any of us really? I know I don't. And as we see with Wilzig showing up, that basically confirms Barb never truly wanted it to end up this way. But it did. Now, around the late 2070s, America's elites are basically gone. They're all in hiding. It's almost like they knew. Kind of suspicious if you ask me. Regardless, they're all hidden away in their various bunkers, similar to the White Springs bunker we talked about in my other video. Go check it out. And we also already covered the president being hidden as well, more than likely on the Poseidon oil rig. On October 10th, 2077 at Mariposa Military Base, they had this super high-ranking commander. Well, he figured out that West-Tec, whose scientists this dude was actually protecting, were doing experiments on a bunch of prisoners for the forced evolutionary virus. After this realization, he basically had a complete and total mental breakdown. So much so, he resigned and was then replaced by Captain Roger Maxson. It was actually Maxson who started investigating and interrogating these West-Tec scientists. This investigation also included Leon von Felden, the lead researcher for West-Tec. Well, this investigation got pretty heated and ultimately led to a bunch of confessions about what West-Tec was doing. Leon von Felden and his constituents were promptly executed, essentially for their war crimes. On October 20th, just 3 days before the bombs fell, Maxson issued an open declaration of secession from the United States to try to get some sort of response from the government. However, Maxson was never given a response. I think this is due to the fact the US government, or what is now the Enclave, didn't really care. They already knew what was going to go down in 3 days, or they didn't respond in time because the government kind of sucks and never got the chance to do so. Who knows? We don't really know to a certainty who dropped the bombs. Finally, on October 23rd, 2077, the Great War began and ended. Other than that, there's very little information that we actually know took place. However, what we do know, I will be going over. What we currently know, there were unknown submersibles sighted off the coast of California. There were also sightings of high-altitude bombers off the Bering Strait, and these were actually believed to be Chinese. And there's at least one known Chinese submarine, the Yangtze, I don't really know how to pronounce that, I do apologize, which was inbound for the American East Coast at 9:13 Eastern Time. The Integrated Operational Nuclear Detection System was able to detect the very first 4 warheads, and the United States went to DEFCON 2. The first bombs hit. At 9:26, the president ordered a counterstrike. The first bombs hit New York, Pennsylvania, and proceeded onward. At 9:46, Washington, D.C. was hit, and pretty much every American facility went offline. The war continued for 2 more additional hours, causing quite the devastation for both China and the United States. You gotta think about it. The warheads used in the Great War were around the 200 to 750 kiloton range. The explanation on the Fallout Wiki describes these smaller bombs causing more soil and debris to be shot into the atmosphere, and with how many warheads were released, it basically caused nuclear fallout for centuries. This should be obvious because I can't even walk 10 feet without having to stick myself with a rat away. That is essentially everything that led us to the Great War, but who actually dropped the first bombs? So Fallout creator Tim Kaine has explained that China was the one to launch the first missile. However, this was their way of retaliating against the United States. And you might be wondering, why? Well, China was made known of the forced evolutionary virus, and biological warfare had been banned for war at this time, so China's natural response was to send some nukes to the US. Here's my theory, and again, I would love to know what your thoughts are in the comments below. I do think the Enclave started the war. I mean, they created the deep state faction for a reason. They wanted complete and total control. They had everything planned out perfectly. They weren't preparing for if the bombs came. They were preparing for when they knew the bombs were coming, if that makes sense. The Enclave decided it was in their best interest to not necessarily tell China about what they were doing, but rather make it appear as though it was leaked. After all the tension that led to this point, they knew China would be left with one option after finding this information. They just didn't want to drop the bombs themselves. They wanted to be able to push the blame. Again, I could be completely wrong and the Enclave were just as blindsided as everyone else, but I do think telling all those corporations that they themselves would drop the bombs would really help the Enclave understand who was on their side and who wasn't without having to expose themselves. Again, we still have like 4 more confirmed seasons of Fallout, or at least I think. So this theory of mine could be completely wrong, who knows? Could be Mexico's retaliation from back in 2051. That'd be crazy. But regardless, I want to know your thoughts. Who do you think dropped the bombs? Do you think there was more at play behind the curtain than what the game and the series is telling us? I would love to know your opinion. I just wanted to reiterate, I appreciate you all, and if you learned anything from this video, please hit subscribe and press the absolute hell out of that notification icon. And until next time, I love you.